Okay, so today is the big day. We are going to start our micro dwarf tomato plants as well as all the other tomato plants, which that's going to be a big undertaking. I was going to do the micro dwarfs last week and then I ended up not being able to do it that weekend, so everything's getting done today. Let me tell you a little bit of what my experience with micro dwarfs has been so far. So I did a video back at the end of October, I'll link it below, where I started a bunch of micro dwarfs and accidentally a couple of dwarfs, thinking they were micro dwarfs, but they weren't. They're in the window right there behind me or in front of me. It was a experiment. I've never grown tomato plants through the winter, and this was the first time I'd done it, and so far so good. Let me show you how they're doing. I did have a couple of failures, of course. What do I have here? I have Orange Dream, and I am going to be starting more of these. Jacalas, I have a couple of these. These are doing really well. You can see all the little tomatoes on there, but they're really tiny plants. So micro dwarfs only get to be about a foot tall or 12 inches. Some of these have like flopped over. I should have staked them. That way they wouldn't be, but you can see some of the limbs are getting a little bit crazy, but there is another, this is what Chocolat's looks like. That's a tomato on there. I've got one called Fat Frog. There's that one over here. And it is quite yummy. Where is Fat Frog? Here's one called Aztec. This is Fat Frog. So this is actually Aztec, but this is Fat Frog. So it says 12 inches, but I would say these are just, you know, maybe a little bit more than 12 inches. But I really enjoy Fat Frog. It produces some really good sized little green tomatoes. They have been up in my computer room slash spare bedroom for the past 2.5 months. I think I took them out from underneath the grow lights at the end of December because they just got to be a little bit too tall to be sitting there. For the most part, they're doing really well. I don't know what this one is. I lost the, oh, there's a weed. Get that out of there. I lost the tag to this one, but look, it's, and I'm not sure if it's a micro dwarf or a dwarf. It's not very big, but the tomato is like slightly fluted. And in the room where I have these sitting, there is a fan. So I keep the fan on. That helps to pollinate the flowers. But if you don't have a fan, all you really need to do is just shake them. You know, run your hands over them and give them a light little shake. And that's all that really is needed to pollinate. So far, I water them twice a week. And I have gotten, I don't know, I'd say like 40 tomatoes off of them. Not a whole lot. I'm thinking that might have to do with the sun. The sun, they're not getting directly hit with the sun. It's enough to keep them going and produce a little bit of fruit. And I am fertilizing them with fish emulsion. And then, what is that other thing? I'll put a picture of it up here. But it's like for fruiting, getting your tomato plants to fruit. But I'm thinking that once I'm able to get these outside, they'll do better. This is what I'm starting my micro dwarfs and my regular, my determinate and indeterminate tomatoes in, are these pots right here. So these are, I guess, are they 2 by 3 inch? 2 by 3 inch pots. And something I'm doing differently this year, I'll tell you about it, is that usually I put the little pots in these inserts like that, and then the insert goes in the tray like this. But I found last year that the outside was getting dried up before the inside. So then the inside was getting too much water because I kept having to water the outside. What I'm doing is I'm leaving the insert out until the seeds get going, until the tomatoes, you know, have a couple of sets of true leaves, and then I'll put them in here, because what happens is when you put water in the bottom, it forces the roots to want to reach down to the water. But I don't really need that, and because it doesn't sit completely flat. I don't know if you can tell. There's, I don't know, a few millimeters away from the bottom of the tray, and it forces the roots to want to reach for the water. But I don't really need that to get the seeds started. And I'm using my own seed starting mix. I have a video on how I make that, how I sterilize it. Why do you want to sterilize your seed starting mix? Even if you buy it packaged from a store, I would say bring it home and sterilize it, because there's always the potential that there are fungus gnat eggs living in that mix. And you don't want to introduce, if you're seed starting inside, you don't want to introduce fungus gnats into your home because it is gross. Or whatever else kind of eggs are in there, they will potentially, you can have a problem with bugs. So by sterilizing, basically I mix up my mix, and then I pour boiling water over it, stir it up real good, make sure it's steaming hot, that it's killing anything that's in that soil. I'm gonna seed start in the living room. It's more comfortable in there. I have a little table set up where we do crafts and stuff. That is where my TV is, and I'm gonna just turn on some mindless TV, maybe Revenge or Grey's Anatomy, or maybe YouTube, some YouTube videos I need to catch up on. This is where I've been seed starting this year. It's serving me pretty well. So I've got 2 flats. Get these out of the way. These are what I'm gonna up pot in. These I got from the Dollar Tree around, what is it, end of January, beginning of February. You'll start to see at the Dollar Tree they start putting out these little pots. But these are pretty awesome because they have at the bottom, you can take the bottom off, and then you can, bottom water, you don't have to water as often. This is all the bigger size of a pot that you need. I think a 6 by 6 inch pot is, that we're actually doing a challenge on Tomato Obsession of growing a micro dwarf in a can. So any kind of tomato can product, and the one I'm using is only a 28-ounce can, so we'll see if I can grow a micro dwarf in a can. I've got all my micro dwarfs here. Something that I did in preparation for this day, because I am starting my tomatoes a lot later than I normally have. Excuse you. I have started my tomatoes at the end of January. I've started my tomatoes in the middle of February. Today is March 19th. This is the latest I have ever started my tomatoes. I'm hoping that I'm not in trouble. It is what it is. I've always started too early, and then I have no place to put them once they get big. So what I have found is that when it gets warm and when there's a lot of daylight, that's when the tomatoes get going, no matter when you start. I'm starting my tomatoes, I'm seed starting them in the basement where it's nice and warm. They will germinate really quickly. I find that because it's so warm down there, they germinate within 3 to 5 days. If you're starting in someplace colder in your house, it might take them longer to germinate and get going. So keep that in mind. But in preparation for this day, because I was so anxious to get started, I just had to do something. I already made, because I'd already picked out all the tomatoes I was starting. I'd already made all of my name tags. So I'm going to stick my name tags in the pots. Another thing I'm doing this year is I made note cards. So each note card has the name of the tomato on it. And these have the word micro because they're the micro dwarfs. And as the season goes, I'm going to make notes on each of the tomatoes that I'm growing. And hopefully that'll help next year when it's time to decide what I want to start. Let me get one of these out of the way. I think I was telling you guys about the trays. So I have bought from Greenhouse Mega Store. There was another, I think Amazon. I think I bought some of the pots and then these holders from Amazon as well. And then I have bought from, what's that one place? I can't even think of the name, and it's the one that I like the most. Bootstrap Farmer. Bootstrap Farmer. Their stuff is no joke. I think you could run over it with a truck and it would be fine. Maybe not that much, but it's good quality stuff. If you have the extra dollars to spare, invest in Bootstrap Farmer trays and flats, because like this is Greenhouse Mega Store. I believe this is Greenhouse Mega Store. You see how they're like and then I've had some of them crack. I haven't had any Bootstrap Farmer stuff crack. Let me see. Do I have a Bootstrap Farmer container? Oh, here's a Bootstrap Farmer container. And I am squishing that. Like this is good quality stuff. The Bootstrap Farmer, if I give away any of these, it's going to be like, getting these, you get a bunch of them for cheap. And I'm not going to be heartbroken when I give these away or I sell a plant and it has these in them. But the Bootstrap Farmer stuff, that's mine to keep. Good stuff. So if you're looking for quality, Bootstrap Farmer. If you're looking for quantity, and trying to save some pennies, Greenhouse Megastore. So I had all my micro dwarfs in a Ziploc baggie. What exactly am I going to do? So here they all are on the table. A tray here. So what I think I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to do, depending on how many seeds I have, a lot of these I have traded in the Facebook group Tomato Obsession. It is so easy to trade in those groups, like 42, 43. So I have 43 different varieties of micro dwarfs that I'm starting today. And I will show you an overview at the end when I have them all potted up. When I have the seeds all in the pots, of all the ones I'm starting. If you have one that you would recommend that I don't have, please let me know in the comments. I am fairly new to micro dwarfs, and I'm sure there's probably a ton more variety that I don't have, and you know me, I want them all. So let me know in the comments if there's any that you recommend, or if there's any that I'm growing here and you're kind of like, it's not worth it. Just any information. I like it all. All right, so they're all in there. So I think what I'm going to do is the same as I did for the peppers, is 3 seeds per cell. Depending how many germinate and how soon I have to pot them up will depend upon whether I thin them or pot up all of them and then am able to put them in my greenhouse. So let's get started. I actually am wanting to do an experiment where I have a 10-gallon grow pot outside, and I read somewhere that you can do 10 micro plants to a 10-gallon pot. So I'm thinking 10 of these I'm just going to put in one big pot and see how they do. The smartest idea, because now I have to go through and find them. Oh. This is Pendulina orange. All right, so Jippin' Chineki. So I have a couple of like baggies, like they're just with a little tiny piece of tape taped together, where I traded for them more than once. Like this one I traded for, and I also bought from Forgotten Heirlooms. Fat Frog. Chibiko would be the first one I do. So this is Chibiko. So when I was doing some research on micro dwarfs, I read that the best tasting micro dwarf is called Monetka, or Monetka? I don't know. Ah! I just dumped them out everywhere. You know what? I changed my mind because if I have a good amount of seeds, I'm going to do 4, because I only did 3 per the peppers that I started, and I'm kind of bummed because there's a bunch of them that haven't germinated yet. I'm like, what? I mean, I'm going to have plenty of peppers, but I really wanted all of those varieties. But I've got 4 seeds in there, and then what I'll do is I take this because I tend to find that the seeds get stuck to my finger, and then I'm moving the seeds around on my finger. And so I just use this. It's an old paintbrush, and it's got like this flat pointy end, and I use it to press it down in there. All right, so 1 done. So I'm just going to keep doing that with all of these, and that's pretty much it. I'm going to bottom water, and then I'm going to take them down the basement, and they'll germinate probably in about 3 to 5 days. And then once I've planted them, back in the Ziploc baggie. Fun fact, did you know that micro dwarf tomatoes are also known as kitchen tomatoes or pot tomatoes? Because they can be grown indoors, which is awesome. So micro dwarfs can be grown indoors year round. Although I have found that I'm not getting that many tomatoes from them, the ones that I am getting are still quite tasty, which I was worried about that. The fact that they weren't getting like a lot of natural light, outdoor sun. that the flavor would be compromised, which it might be. I don't know yet. I'll know when I take them outside, and then, but it's not enough that it would keep me from growing them. I'll definitely be growing micro dwarfs in my house year round from now on. Now, these, I do want to say, I am planning on putting them in, I would say half of them I'm going to put in one of my green stock containers. So I'm going to do a green stock full of micro dwarfs and see how that goes. So I think I'll do 1 micro dwarf per leaf of the green stock. I think that's what I'm going to do. And then as far as fertilizing these, you don't need any fertilizer to start your seeds. Once they get a set of true leaves, that's when you want to start fertilizing. And what I'll fertilize with in the very beginning is just fish emulsion. So I've got a big old gallon jug of fish emulsion downstairs. And every time I also have a bucket of water that I carry downstairs. That way I don't have to keep up, down, up, down, up, down. So I have a big bucket of water, and I will add a little dollop of the fish emulsion, stir it up in there. And that's really all I do to feed them until there's a few sets of true leaves, until they get, I don't know, probably about that size. And then when I go to pot them up, then I'll start adding in something to kind of push them to fruit a little bit. And I can't remember the name of it. Is it Fox Hill Farms? I think it's Fox Hill Farm. I don't know what it's called, but I'll put a picture of what I use. After probably about 3 to 4 weeks, I'll start fertilizing with something that has potassium, phosphorus, and nitrogen in it. But in the beginning, I just use fish emulsion, and my plants seem to like that. Oh, I also wanted to say that if you didn't know, there is a difference between micro dwarf and dwarf. Micro dwarfs, like I had said before, they only get to be about a foot tall, maybe a little bit more, 18 inches, somewhere around there. Dwarfs can get to be between 2 feet and 4 feet tall, so they can still get pretty big. A dwarf is not a micro dwarf. If you're looking for micro dwarfs, make sure it says that word micro in front of it. Otherwise, you're going to have a big tomato plant growing in your house, which is still doable. I have some out in the kitchen. I'll throw a picture up of them. They're in my kitchen window, and I'm hoping soon I can get them outside, because they're not really fruiting very much where they're at, and I attribute that to because of the lack of sun in the pot that they're in. So, but I'm trying to just keep them alive long enough until I can stick them in the ground. But let's get to this seed starting, and then I'll show you at the end the setup of where I've got them. All right, that did not take me as long as I thought it would. It's about 45 minutes later. And let me give you an, hopefully you can read my handwriting. And then on this side, the pink are the ones that I did 3 seeds to a cell. And then I decided I would do 1 seed to a cell for a few, since I had so many on this flat left over. I've still got 4, but I was just like, that's enough. I think I might replant some peppers in those 4. These are the ones that I've got 1 seed per cell. So I'm trying out something to see if doing 1 seed in a cell makes the plant stronger and healthier, as opposed to separating them later on. I'm taking these downstairs, and for the first 2 days, I don't have the lights on, and then on day 3 is when I'll turn the lights on, because that's usually when they start to germinate. So you don't need light to germinate seeds. Once they reach the surface, they do need light. So usually, since I've had germination on day 3 before, I'll leave the lights off for a couple of days and then turn them on day 3. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take these 2 trays downstairs, and then we're going to get started with tomatoes. I got lots and lots of determinate and indeterminate and dwarf tomatoes that I'm starting. So there's my tomato in a can that I started 2 days ago on St. Patrick's Day. And then down here are all of the micro dwarfs. And the lights will get turned on in a couple of days. Now, let's fill up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more shelves, 10 more flats with tomatoes. So there we are, 43 different varieties of micros in their pots. Tomato Palooza 2023 is a go.